Sony, the PlayStation 5 will only be available in limited quantities, which isn't all that surprising when you remember that we're in the middle of a global pandemic that has impacted businesses at every level except the absolute very top level where billionaires are still becoming richer than they've ever been. Somehow. If you want to guarantee getting your hands on the console in time for Christmas, well, tough. Very top level where billionaires. There is no guarantee here, fool. But Sony, gripped as it always is by a state of perpetual philanthropy, has you covered as best as it can manage by letting you apply for the chance to buy something. Like you were applying for a job or a small business. Cronies, Jeff Bezos.
Right at me Ganondorf on the wall. That's rough. Yeah, that'll dent it for sure. Oh, fuck. Oh well, my Lord Humongous is still all right.
Anyway, the point is that every now and then we do have some bright spots to talk about, like Sony's latest turn toward the altruistic, and really, the generosity in this particular instance is off the charts. See, like many Americans, I find myself wondering exactly what, if any, financial stability can be salvaged at the end of this year. Not that calendar dates are anything but arbitrary markers, so the end of this year won't actually change anything. Just stop thinking about that. The year will end and everything will be great, except for the recession. But with such likelihood of a full-on devastating financial recession, with the stock market fragile and the job market completely ruined, with so many people struggling to make ends meet and so much available money funneled up and hoarded by men like Jeff Bezos who owe me £1 million, the question on everybody's lips is this: will Sony allow me the opportunity to apply for a chance at giving Sony my money? And the answer is, fuck yes! Woo! Fuck yes it will! Oh yes, at long last we finally have some tangible purchasing details for the PlayStation 5 that is coming out, Greg, when's it coming out? This year.
2020, it's coming out in 2020, this year.
No, we don't actually have a release date for the system, which I reiterate is out in a matter of mere months. No, we don't have a price for the system, which I cannot emphasize enough will be on sale before this year's inevitably depressing fucking holidays. But what we do have, and prepare to feel your entire genital territory inflame with swampy passion, is a chance to ask Sony permission to allow us to pre-order the PlayStation 5 from Sony. According to Sony, the PlayStation 5 will only be available in limited quantities, which isn't all that surprising when you remember that we're in the middle of a global pandemic that has impacted businesses at every level except the absolute very top level where billionaires are still becoming richer than they've ever been. Somehow. If you want to guarantee getting your hands on the console in time for Christmas, well, tough shit. There is no guarantee here, fool. But Sony, gripped as it always is by a state of perpetual philanthropy, has you covered as best as it can manage by letting you apply for the chance to buy something. Like you were applying for a job or a small business loan. Hopeful PS5 owners are invited to register their interest online, providing their PSN username in the hopes that Sony will deem them worthy. While the company claims that pre-orders will be available on a first-come, first-served basis, that's not the full truth. Why just sell things to the first people who'll buy them when you can manipulate the narrative around your product by ensuring it gets into the hands of your most loyal, sycophantic, and uncritical fans? Sure, consideration may be available in order of application, but approval? That's a little different. According to Sony's FAQ on the matter, pre-order applicants will be chosen based on previous interests and PlayStation activities. You're being vetted. Basically, Sony is going to give you a background check to see how likely it is that you love PlayStation products, how likely it is that you're already planning on loving the thing before you have it, and is able to pick and choose who's extended an invitation to pre-order based on whatever criteria Sony deems fit. We're in an age of social media after all. Absolutely anybody can be exploited as a means of free marketing these days. Oh, and do please note that I said Sony will extend an invitation to pre-order based on the aforementioned criteria, meaning when you apply to pre-order and Sony approves you for it, you're still not guaranteed a PS5. The invite to pre-order will, itself, be a limited time event and will be good for one system per user ID, along with up to 2 whole controllers. And so it is that the next generation starts, not with a bang, but with customers auditioning to buy things. This is, of course, just a continuation of what capitalism has become. It's not about making things that customers want, it's about telling customers what they want and making them debase themselves to get it. Whether you're trying to rent an apartment or buy a vehicle, these days it's the customer who has to prove they are worthy of the opportunity to spend the money they had to prove they were worthy enough to earn in the first place. Supply and demand is no longer an effective way for companies to capitalize. Do you think they care about what you demand? Do you think you as a customer have demands anymore? No. It's now all about supply and asking nicely. Supply and waiting for credit checks. Supply and predestined distinctions between who has and who hasn't. Sony will of course not be the only place you can obtain a PS5. Other retailers would love to sell you a PS5, it's just they can't tell you how they can do it yet. So all we've got to go on right now is Sony's scheme, which appears to be some sort of snapshot of a future publisher heaven, where they control not only the supply, but the demand. And all in a roundabout arbitrary way that contributes to the overall confusopoly of the game industry that we've criticised many times before. Once again, this industry can't just make and sell products. Everything now has to have a fucking walkthrough.
My gosh.
Anyway, how much does the PS5 cost? When is the PS5 actually fucking coming out? Who knows? We just know it's this year and that it will cost some money. Wow, really feels like we're about to dive into a new generation of the gaming. Am I right, fellow the gamers? Fucking hell. I mean, fucking hell though. We're still doing this, are we, video games? We're still going to insist on pushing out a console generation this year. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are lots of less financially well-off people looking forward to the Xbox Series X and PS5 because it means the Xbox One and PS4 are about to bloody become affordable. But as for the industry itself, I just think it's very brave? Yeah, sure, let's go with brave. It's very brave to see them committed to pushing out expensive luxury hardware during a sickness-based economic collapse. It's especially bold when you remember that the console launches are themselves pretty troubled already. The marquee launch title of the Xbox Series X has been delayed to 2021, as Halo Infinite misses the opening window of the system despite being by far the most heavily pushed and recognizable item Microsoft has for it. It doesn't help that people were already skeptical of Halo Infinite, criticizing its graphics and predicting a dual launch on Xbox One would ensure a lack of next-gen feel. Many of the titles, in fact, will simply be upgraded versions of current-gen titles or cross-released PC games. Other high-profile launch titles, such as Deathloop, have been delayed as a direct result of the coronavirus pandemic and ongoing quarantine measures. New generation launch libraries are notoriously shit, always have been, but even by historical standards, the meager assortment of mildly interesting games available for PS5 and Xbox Series X is looking fucking dreadful. But hey, at least the PS5 has bug snacks, right? Bug snacks! Oh yeah, so does the PS4. Christ, PS5 doesn't even have an exclusive on the obligatory joke launch game. Fortunately, thanks to programs like Smart Delivery, all of those upgraded current-gen titles will provide clearly communicated free upgrade paths for next-gen buyers, providing an instant incentive to ignore their mounting health debts and plunk down the cash for a new platform. Except, of course, for those games that don't have clearly communicated free upgrade paths. Control, for example, is re-releasing itself as a new game, and it's the only version that can be upgraded, meaning existing Control owners will have to buy it again because fuck them, right? Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War will allow PS4 and Xbox One players the privilege of spending another $10 to upgrade the game on PS5 and Series X, but only if they bought it digitally, because these days you need FAQs and walkthroughs and guides to buy anything. You have to pay the $10 because it costs $10 more on PS5 and Xbox Series X. Activision has joined 2K Games in normalizing the idea that next-gen games cost $70 now, as standard. An extra little dollop of shit dropped onto the heads of a population that right now, by and large, has no fucking money. The $10 price hike is, of course, course, alongside the microtransactions and DLC and season passes and loot boxes and multiple special editions and collector's editions and merch and sponsorship deals and product placements and tax avoidances and tax breaks and tax refunds and underpaid staff and routine layoffs that have contributed billions of dollars to an industry that claims it can't afford to just make and sell the products, it's explicitly in the business of making and selling. So anyway, because ain't nobody gonna give me a review version of these consoles because they don't like me, what I mean to say is that I applied for an invitation to pre-order a PS5 so I can try and get one for work, and I will be rejected. Because I will not be deemed worthy enough to buy a PlayStation 5.
I've been told by people who actually are good at business that I should do some more self-promotion. It's been a while since we've done that, so patreon.com/Jimquisition. If you want to support this show, you don't have to. You're very, very welcome if you do. We do Twitch streaming now, Twitch TV/Jimquisition. It's quite easy to remember all this, isn't it? So you can go on there, we do some live streams like a couple times a week. And Saturday, September 5th, if you go to Twitch TV Go Professional Wrestling, although I should be hosting it on my channel as well, I will be there as the super heavyweight supervillain Sterling, my celestial alter ego, where we will be at the Poly Cult Party, a wrestling event in Pittsburgh that will be broadcast live, and I can't bloody wait. Just like I can't wait for the next generation of consoles, which I'm not good enough to have. Thank God for me. A little bit smudged.
Is Marvel's Avengers a piece of 16th century neckwear? Because it's rough. If your idea of a top-notch Marvel game is a sloppy, slapdash, glitchy, visually painful, boring waste of time, then Marvel's Avengers is right up your alley. Square Enix's long-awaited live service will top your Christmas list if you love shit games. Somewhere in the cynical, seedy heart of Marvel's Avengers is a promising game. If you can fight through the visual effects that blister all over the screen, the awful cluttered user interface, and the camera, the goddamn camera that feels like it was ripped from the year 2008. If you can fight through all of that, and if you've got the patience of a saint and can deal with the constant menu fiddling and the loading screens and the long, boring cutscenes, and on top of all that, if you're okay with a game that repeats itself constantly, recycles content, has a handful of mission types that it just regurgitates over and over again, if you don't mind punching the same robots in the face for hours, if you've got all the time in the world for yet another desperate, cloying, bandwagoning, looter-shooter style game, or if you just like Captain America, then somewhere deep within Marvel's Avengers, it can sometimes be quite fun to punch robots in the face. It's just not fun enough to last for hours. Maybe about 10 minutes a day for like a week. Not that that really works for Marvel's Avengers, which of course is one of these live service games. So even though Avengers really looks like it was initially conceived to be a single-player game, or certainly it looks like it would have been a lot better had it been one, there are plenty of daily and weekly challenges to constantly log into and experience, and all of it's the same boring rehashed shit we've The Xbox Series S has finally been confirmed as the smallest Xbox ever at $299 US. Right, that's that bit out of the way. Let's take a big round wet dump on Electronic Arts. We're dumping on EA again, I'm dancing in the background. Alright, hang on. Right, back. Electronic Arts recently caused a backlash because it was trying to cram full commercials into a video game, because of course it bloody well was. Of course Electronic Arts tried to get away with actual actual commercials in the video games it's selling for money. Fucking pricks. Just fucking bricks. Now, the video game industry is full of bullshit, and the AAA video game industry is no stranger to corporate tie-ins, product placements, and even the occasional ad. Electronic Arts certainly is no stranger to sponsorships on top of the microtransactions and the loot boxes, and the season passes, and the DLC, and the special editions, and the other forms of intercompany promotion that EA and other companies routinely engage in while telling us that there's just not enough money to go around. However, with UFC 4, Electronic Arts did what Electronic Arts does best. Take things too fucking far and piss everyone the fucking off. Well, that's gonna get this video demonetized. Why do I keep saying fuck within the first 3 minutes of a video? Fuck! This isn't like a logo in a loading screen or something. Look at this shit, it's fucking pop-ups! The most notorious of which being a full-screen video advert for Amazon's The Boys. Usually, video games are at least somewhat subtle about the stacks of cash they're getting from other companies to hawk their shit. But in this case, during replays and overlays, people were getting these full, fucking intrusive ads. On top of that, people find the timing of the appearance of these commercials pretty effing suspicious. I don't know why I've bothered saying effing now. People feel like ads appearing about 2 weeks after the game launched, you know, after all the reviews had come out, might have been just a touch dishonest. It's also not uncommon. We've seen Activision do this with microtransactions. We've seen other companies other than Activision do this with microtransactions. Put the game out, get people buying it, get positive reviews that don't mention anything, get people invested in your product and its ecosystem, and then start trying to needle more money out of them. It happens too often in the video game industry to not be deliberate. And if it's not about getting positive reviews, it's certainly about getting people invested first. This idea of adding nasty little monetary practices into games post-launch really lends a fresh perspective to the phrase buyer beware, which is a phrase some people like to throw around to defend microtransactions and ads and all these other shitty monetary practices. Well, you know, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Yeah, well, how can buyer beware when buyer be ambushed all the time? Anyway, it's suspect as bloody hell, and I'm not inclined to give Electronic Arts the benefit of the doubt because it's doing what the game industry has been doing for years, which is what all these publishers end up doing when people expect any benefit of any doubt provided their way. So, screw them there. Sneaky little fuckers, that's what they are. They're sneaky little fuckers, and they got caught out, and people got upset, just like with Star Wars Battlefront 2, Electronic Arts overreached, pushed the envelope, tried to see what it could get away with, and failed. By the way, this whole situation can be added to the list of things I've successfully called. In 2018, I said that I'm going to expect to see ads start popping up in games like this. Here's a clip from a Jimquisition from 2018. The study argues that video games are an increasingly seductive prospect for marketers due to the fact players can spend hours interacting with a game and are thus perfectly positioned for repetitive brand messaging. Also in 2017, a study by Delta DNA states that developers see ads as an important monetization opportunity, noting that mobile game developers have become less cautious and more confident about sticking ads in their game. Game makers, he argues, are also still fearful about increasing ad frequency per session, and as a result, many are still leaving a lot of cash on the table. This is borne out by the fact that average ad revenues are still only a third of total game revenues. Basically, he's saying that games could stand to have a lot more fucking ads in them, and I do fear that's where we're headed, because I've long since stopped putting a single damn thing past the game industry, and they've already layered so much additional monetization, so many obscene levels of additional money-making opportunities onto their products that at this point more obtrusive in-game adverts only look like a natural step. After all, why just sell a product when you can sell it and then turn your customers into the product as well, their mental real estate being sold to the highest marketing bidder? According to additional reports, it seems that ads have also been patched into UFC 3, letting players of the previous installment also know that The Boys Season 2 is available as an Amazon original. Can I have some money, Amazon? I just gave you a little show a plug. I'm not seeing it. I've heard mixed things. I'm probably not gonna see it. But like I said, Electronic Arts has failed due to not being subtle enough, because Electronic Arts and subtlety go together like Electronic Arts and ethical behaviour. So there was a backlash, Electronic Arts has relented and the ads have been removed. But not before EA tried to defend itself in a mealy-mouthed fashion, naturally. Earlier this week, the team turned on ad placements in EA Sports UFC 4 that appeared during the replay moments in gameplay. This type of advertising inventory is not new to the UFC franchise. Fuck off! Though we have typically reserved displaying ads to specific main menu titles or Octagon logo placement, it is abundantly clear from your feedback that integrating ads into the replay and overlay experience is not welcome. You don't fucking say. The advertisements have been disabled by the team, and we apologise. And how ironic, I was reading this from the Kotaku page and a fucking ad went up and covered the quote. Get a screen grab of that, Jesus. Anyway, the advertisements have been disabled by the team, and we apologise for any disruption to gameplay that players may have experienced. We realise that this should have been communicated with players ahead of time, and that's on us. It's always on you. I've brought this up before. I'll finish off the quote. We want to make sure our players have the best possible experience playing EA Sports UFC 4, so ad integration in the replay and overlay experience will not be reappearing in the future. Right, back to what I was saying, right? That's on us. We should have communicated with players ahead of time, they say, right? EA, you do this all the time. You pull the same bullshit every single time and then justify your behaviour with a whole bunch of woulda, coulda, shouldas. In fact, I do believe, I'm almost completely certain that I have asked the question I'm about to ask before. Last year, in fact. How many times, EA, do you need to learn the same lesson? You didn't learn it with Star Wars Battlefront 2. You didn't learn it with the games that came before. There's a Jimquisition somewhere, I think, from last year where I went through the list of all the things EA's done and said sorry for and said they'll do better next time, and they've learned their lesson. And they don't. This is a routine. This whole thing is a performance at this point. Like the post-patching in of bullshit business models, it happens too often for it to be an accident. Or, well, I'll do what I usually do and I will leave the door open for that one other option. Electronic Arts really is somehow truly that fucking ignorant, stupid, pathetic, and useless. That it could keep making the same mistakes time and time again, keep claiming it's learned its lesson and learning nothing. But you know what? I don't believe Electronic Arts is that stupid. I believe Electronic Arts, like Ubisoft, like Activision, like all of these companies, think we are the stupid ones. And while there's no shortage of corporate defenders lining up to prove Electronic Arts right, there are plenty of us that can see exactly what you're doing, EA. Like, some of us have been in the game long enough to see these patterns, spread out over years of trackable routine behaviour. Let's be completely honest here. There's one reason you tried this. You wanted to see if you could get away with it. It's what the game industry does. This is the beginning of something you'd like to see widespread across the industry. Isn't that right, EA? Because you know full well that this kind of stuff is rife all over the mobile gaming market, which, let's face it, is where you and your fellow corporations steal most of your business ideas from. Except unlike on the mobile market, where most of these exploitative, manipulative games are, at least, free, You want to keep cramming them into your $60 base price games that next generation will apparently be $70 base price games. I still check in on mobile games here and there just to see what fresh hell awaits us, and you know, the ad stuff is huge. It's been huge for years and years and years. Some games offer free in-game currency or something in exchange for you sitting through a 30-second video ad. There are often ad-free premium versions of games. And then there are some games that, you know, just have ads in them. And there is no chuffing way AAA video game publishers have not seen all this and do not covet all of this. Just be on the lookout and brace yourself. A new generation's coming, and with it could come a whole host of new, ever more shocking forms of monetization. We all know well enough that if EA had gotten away with putting these full ads into UFC 4, that would only have been the beginning. And it may still do, because remember, this is something the game industry likes to do as well. Push the envelope real far, then scale back to something that would have been way more unacceptable if it wasn't a backtrack. It's a kind of artificial compromise, and it's one we don't fucking fall for here, which is why at least it doesn't have loot boxes has never been a good excuse for anything in a game. Putting ad breaks into their perpetually overcharging, constantly charging games sounds like AAA publisher nirvana to me. And no, friends, I don't like it.
Piercing and ranged attack, and you get more resistance.
Animals and in the ark, the tears in torrents flow. Who was it said there's land ahead? Mr. Toad.
Alright everybody, I come bringing wonderful news for you all. I have fixed it for you, so you've got the opportunity to shut up right now and listen to me. So, isn't that exciting for you? Shut up and listen. We're talking about Battletoads today, and this game. This game. Do we even call it a game? I mean, it's more like 12 games duct taped together. What I don't feel confident in calling it is a beat-em-up game, or a brawler, or however you like to distinguish this particular subgenre of action game. Because it's got brawling levels. I mean, you're looking right now at some lovely beat-em-up footage, but that's only a bit of the game. In between the brawling sections are all of the other video games that have ever been invented, and they're all just thrown into this game in a sort of kitchen sink methodology, one after the other, sometimes feeling as if there's no rhyme or reason to it. Now, while prior Battletoads games have always played around with the idea of genre, have always danced across genre lines as it were, the games have always often taken the form of a brawler that happens to dabble in other game types. Battletoads 2020 is every type of video game ever occasionally dabbling in being a straightforward brawler. It's a move that is not going to prove popular with everyone. I think if you go into this expecting a more straightforward brawler with the occasional racing section or what have you, you might end up pretty disappointed. Battletoads 2020 is quite content to go long stretches of game without ever returning to the beat-em-up formula most closely associated with it. The result is a game that is mechanically all over the place. As well as the more traditional action gameplay, you'll face a barrage of button-tapping mini-games, racing sections of course, bullet hell shooter sections, action puzzle platformers similar to something like Abe's Odyssey. This scattershot approach borders on intrusive at times. You never get to settle into one game type. You never feel like you can actually get practiced or accomplished at anything. And if you don't already have a wide variety of gameplay experience and a wide variety of tastes, you could find the constant expectation to change what you're doing quite obnoxious, really. I speak as someone who obviously does play a wide variety of games and has played many game types in the genres that Battletoads has been dabbling in, but when you produce a game with such wildly different experiences that follow one after the other, you could alienate a player with even the most varied of tastes depending on whether or not they're in the mood for your particular bullshit. For example, I mentioned the puzzle platforming and I mentioned bullet hell shooting. Now, there is a portion of Battletoads where those two types of game follow one after the other more than once. So you've got bullet hell, slow-paced action puzzle platformer, bullet hell, slow-paced action puzzle platformer. Not only does this create a tonal whiplash that makes it hard for me as a player to engage and stay invested in what's going on, last night I wasn't in the bloody mood for puzzle platforming. You know, I just wasn't. I got bored. And it's not as if Battletoads is doing any one particular thing badly. Every genre it dabbles in, it's fairly accomplished with. The shooting sections, the mini-games, the racing segments, they're all well put together, they're all competently crafted, they're all in their own individual way fun. But Battletoads is all over the place, on purpose. I can't say that the game can't decide what it wants to be. This game has been made with very clear direction. It's very clear that Battletoads wants to be everything, and in that way has provided a classic example of the jack of all trades, not being particularly brilliant at anything it does, but providing a fairly decent slice of everything on offer. The scattershot approach to gameplay is carried over into the plot and the writing as well. The game is absolutely drenched in self-referential humour, often self-deprecating humour, parody, and very much like the gameplay itself, it just throws so much at the player in the hopes that enough of it will work. And enough of it does, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I mean, I would say maybe 25% of the time, a joke in Battletoads sort of lands. But it is one of those scripts that's just a gag every few seconds, so it's cycling through all of the weak jokes and coming to the fairly decent ones at a rather respectable clip. You know, for every 5 jokes about how, oh, aren't video games funny? Why do these enemies suddenly spawn out of nowhere? Ha 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 ha, it's a video game. There's at least one moment that's cute enough to make me smile and sometimes even get a little bit of a laugh. And when Battletoads is focused on being an actual brawler, it's really quite decent. I mean, it's not as good as some of the others I've played this year, like Streets of Rage 4, but it's very fast-paced, there's a lot of action on screen, the ability to tag in and out, cycle through the Battletoads is quite fun, although that does seem to come at the expense of online multiplayer, although online multiplayer for a game that can't focus on being one particular game might not work out so well in this particular case. It's probably just too much creative mayhem for 2 players in remote locations to stick with. But there is local co-op, and switching between the Battletoads to try and keep your combo meter up, to try and keep all the attacks fresh, that ends up into a pretty decent rhythm. At least when the game isn't so full of audio-visual information, you don't know what's going on or where the attacks are coming from. Because Battletoads' biggest strength consistently is also its biggest weakness. It is everything at all times, and it is a mess. And sometimes that mess is fun, and sometimes that mess is a mess. I dare say this is going to be controversial. I mean, I haven't looked at the discourse around this game very much so far, but I mean, people didn't like the art style to begin with. I do. I like it. It is very silly, bordering on childish, but I find it charming, especially when I see it in, you know, normally what I'd do is I'd edit that out and then re-record so that I actually don't trail off and completely lose my train of thought, but today I think I'll just leave it in. She got a nice little treat. The sound of me completely losing my plot. But the exaggerated, childish, cartoony art style certainly emphasizes the overall slaloming tone that this game maintains. Plus, seeing really exaggerated, authentic cartoon animation in a gameplay situation is, well, it's always going to delight me on some level. I like Battletoads, I really do. I think it's decent at everything it tries to do, even though the constant changes can alienate a player, even someone with a diverse taste of game types. It can be a hard-to-follow mess, even when it is just sticking to a genre. I mean, the brawling, as I mentioned, there's just so much information on screen, and there are so many different attacks, and there are so many, options to tag in and out that it can be confusing. But despite how messy everything is, I can't say that it's unfocused. This is all deliberate, this is all by design. The game knows what it's doing. It's just whether or not what it's doing is edifying to you as a player. And to some it won't be, because this game really just doesn't let up on its own bollocks. It's an excitable game that is messy without being sloppy, but also it's varied without being particularly considerate. It's a game that goes everywhere at all times at once, and therefore runs the risk of actually going nowhere, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't having fun with the game, and that, on occasion, it didn't make me do a giggle. And like many games served on the Xbox One, it benefits in the recommendation department from being a Game Pass game. I couldn't recommend this as a purchase without many caveats, but as a Game Pass offering, I think it's worth the time to check out. But in any case, this is a classic example of one of those games that I'm enjoying quite a bit, and yet can't blame anyone for hating it. And that's it, that's what I think about Battletoads. You can all go now.
The world has held great heroes, as history books have shown. But never a day went down to fame compared with that of Toad. Intelligent Mr. Toad, encouraging Mr. Toad.
"2019 has been a hell of a year. In the game industry, there's been a lot of bullshit, but there's also been some top quality titles. Capcom's been on a tear with the Resident Evil 2 remake and Devil May Cry 5. A Plague Tale: Innocence and Disco Elysium gave us some strong, narratively driven experiences. The Outer Worlds was the spiritual successor to Fallout New Vegas that we were all clamoring for in the wake of Fallout 76. There are some titles that I've wanted to give shout-outs to but didn't even have room for when we were giving out our best of